Good afternoon, everybody. It is Steve Lookner with Agenda Free TV. In a few minutes, about 10 minutes, less than 10 minutes, NASA is going to give an update on the Boeing Starliner spacecraft, which, as I say in the title, is stuck. So the reason I say it's stuck is because that press conference, that Starliner spacecraft carried 2 astronauts to the International Space Station in early June. And the mission was supposed to be for around a week. And now here we are over 2 months later, well, basically 2 months later, and that spacecraft is still sitting there at the International Space Station because there are concerns about the flight worthiness of the spacecraft. It had some thruster issues during the initial flight on the way up there, and there's just concerns that the spacecraft might not be safe to bring the astronauts home. So these astronauts, which were supposed to stay up there a week, they've been there for a couple months. They may have to stay till next year. There's talk of them maybe coming down not on the Starliner but on a SpaceX Dragon spacecraft, which is the current spacecraft which takes American astronauts to and from the International Space Station. So NASA is going to give an update on this at 1 Eastern time, which is in about 6 or 7 minutes. And we are going to listen in on the NASA Boeing crew flight test status update. The crew flight test is the test flight that had the crew on it, which is this test flight, which was supposed to last a week and has now lasted a couple of months. So we'll see what they have to say. It's my understanding that they're not supposed to release a decision today. I've been hearing that soon, possibly next week, NASA will decide, do we want to have maybe the SpaceX, do we want to start counting on the SpaceX and plan for the SpaceX craft to bring these 2 astronauts home? They're there with the other astronauts who are already on the space station. So again, this is going to start in about 6 minutes. I'm sorry that we got on the air a little late, but I wanted to cover it and have you guys be able to listen to this update from NASA. We won't have that much time to talk about it beforehand, but afterwards I can take some more of your comments and questions on the air. We can talk about it after. Thanks so much to Donna Smith for the gift memberships, and thank you so much to our moderators who are here. I really appreciate all of our moderators. We have Ruth Krafasi is here. Kinetic is here. Linda Belk and Larry moderate for us over on X. And hang on a moment. We also have moderating on Twitch. Hearsay, Papa Bear, and Surly Dev. And thanks to QBat for your support on Twitch. And also we have, hold on a second here, as we have about 5 minutes until this press conference starts. Well, I should show you the clock on their screen there. There you go. Hold on a second here, as we have about 5 minutes until. That was 2 of me. Kay Larry Body is modding. Thank you so much, Kay. And all of our other moderators out there, thank you. And let me just quickly show you guys a couple of things really quickly here. So you can see right here, this says NASA to provide crew flight test status update. That's what's going on today. NASA will host a media teleconference at 1 p.m. in about 4 minutes to provide an update on the agency's Boeing crew flight test. Mission managers continue to evaluate the Starliner spacecraft's readiness in advance of decisional meetings no earlier than next week regarding the return of NASA astronauts Butch, Wilmore, and Suni Williams. There will be questions taken. There will be various 5 different people from NASA will be there talking about it and answering questions. And also, really quick, if I can just do this for 2 seconds. Could 2 NASA astronauts be stuck at the space station until next year? Here's what to know. This is from Associated Press. There on the right is Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams. Just really quick, just to read you a little of this before it starts. NASA is wrestling over how and when to bring 2 astronauts back from the International Space Station after repeatedly delaying their return aboard Boeing's troubled capsule. Do they take a chance and send them home in the Boeing Starliner that they went up on, or wait and bring them back next year with SpaceX? Butch, Wilmore, and Suni Williams have been up there since early June. Their planned 8-day mission at the 2-month mark, and possibly it will go 8 months. Testing continues, but with Boeing expressing confidence in its spacecraft, but NASA is divided. A decision is expected next week. We got about, let's see. Ooh, hold on. Let me just check something here. Are they playing music or something on the stream? Let's see. Yeah, all right, yeah. The stream is, we're waiting for the stream to start. Hang on a moment. I need to do this. How am I going to do this? I got to wait until, I got to keep checking if it starts. It's kind of difficult because they're playing music. They're playing music on the stream. I got to put my headphones on. Hold on a moment. Hang on a moment, guys. Let me try to do this. Let's see. You know what I can do? Well, I want to just do it this way. Is this going to work? Let's see. Let's see if I can get my headphones on real quick. You know what? I'm not going to worry about the headphones. I'm just going to keep checking. So, yeah, sorry. They're playing music on the press conference, so it'll start in like 2 minutes. Really quick, what's wrong with Boeing Starliner, says Associated Press. This is Boeing's first time launching astronauts after flying a pair of empty Starliners that suffered software and other issues. Even before Wilmore and Williams blasted off on June 5th, their capsule sprang a leak in propulsion-related plumbing. Boeing and NASA judged the small helium leak to be stable and isolated and proceeded with the test flight. But as Starliner approached the space station the next day, 4 more leaks erupted. 5 thrusters also failed. So leaks and thrusters failures. The capsule managed to dock safely, and 4 of the thrusters ultimately worked, but engineers scrambled, conducting thruster test firings on the ground and in space. After 2 months, there's still no root cause for the thruster malfunctions. All but 1 of the 28 thrusters seem okay, but the fear is that if too many conk out again, the crew's safety could be jeopardized. The thrusters are needed at flight's end to keep the capsule in the right position for the critical deorbit burn. Let's see here. Have they started yet? Hold on. No, they have not started yet. Are the 2 astronauts stranded? NASA bristles at suggestions that Wilmore and Williams are stranded or stuck. NASA has stressed that in an emergency, Starliner could still be used as a lifeboat. A former NASA executive said Thursday the astronauts are kind of stuck, although certainly not stranded. They're safe aboard the space station with plenty of supplies and work to do. If NASA decides to go with a SpaceX return instead of the Starliner, Starliner would be cut loose first to open up one of the 2 parking spots for U.S. capsules. Before that happens, Wilmore and Williams would fashion seats for themselves in the SpaceX Dragon capsule currently docked at the space station. That's because every occupant needs a lifeboat at all times. Once Starliner's docking point is empty, then SpaceX could launch another Dragon to fill that slot, one that Wilmore and Williams would ride. And they might have to wait till next year to get a ride back on SpaceX because blah, 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 like Boeing Starliner. Hold on, I don't want to miss the start of this thing. Like Boeing Starliner, SpaceX's Dragon is meant to carry 4 astronauts to make room for Wilmore and Williams. NASA said Wednesday it could bump 2 of the 4 astronauts due to launch to the space station next month with SpaceX. Right. Right. The current capsule, the current SpaceX capsule, which is at the Starline, which is at the International Space Station, has room for 4 people, and those 4 spaces are already taken up. So they wouldn't put, they would have to bring another SpaceX capsule there, and then bring them back on that SpaceX capsule. So they would have to, if they're coming back on SpaceX, they would have to remain there until February. All right. So any moment now, we are going to get this thing started. It's not started yet. We're waiting for the live news conference, tele-news conference, audio-only news conference from NASA on this situation. And we're going to take your comments and questions after it's over and hear from you what you think about this. And we'll see what NASA has to say. All right, I just keep checking to see if they've started yet. I can't sit here and listen to the music because I can't play copyrighted music. So I have to kind of just keep checking if every 30 seconds if they started or not. Yes, Corrine says they were supposed to be up there 8 days. Yes, they were supposed to be up there for 8 days, and it has now been over 2 months. We need a poll about when they come home. Maybe after the press conference. It's right now. It's 1:02, so it's supposed to start at any moment.
Question.
Oh, here it is.
The conference is being recorded, and if you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. I will now turn conference over to your host, Mr. Josh Finch. Sir, you may proceed.
Good afternoon. Welcome, and thank you for joining us for today's media teleconference on NASA's Boeing crew flight test. I'm Josh Finch with NASA's Office of Communications. Leadership joining me with opening remarks on the mission, as well as to talk about NASA's overall review process for its human spaceflight missions. We have Ken Bowersox, Associate Administrator for NASA's Space Operations Mission Directorate, Russ DeLoach, Chief of NASA's Office of Safety and Mission Assurance, and NASA Chief Astronaut Joe Acaba. Although not providing opening remarks, but here to answer questions, we have Joel Montalbano, Deputy Associate Administrator for NASA's Space Operations Mission Directorate, and Emily Nelson, Chief Flight Director of NASA's Flight Operations. We'll begin with opening comments from Ken.
Hey, Josh, thanks, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. We really appreciate your interest and the time that you spend with us. I want to set expectations first. We don't have any major announcements today, but we did want to spend some time with you going through our process for how we make flight readiness decisions and to give you a little bit of status information. Our technical experts are all busy diving deeply into all the data that's been generated over the past few weeks, going through the feedback of new propulsion system experts that have been brought in, looking at planning for our return options, and preparing for some decision points that are ahead at the program control board and eventually a flight readiness review. The way it works at NASA before a normal launch, we have a lot of readiness reviews at the programs with our technical authorities, and the results of those reviews come to an agency board called the Flight Readiness Review. Typically, that's right before launch, where we bring in representatives from all of the related centers, the technical authorities, the programs, the NASA Engineering and Safety Center, flight operations. We get everybody together. We listen to the status of the mission, go through some special topics, and then we poll everybody at the end on whether or not they think we're ready to undertake the mission. At that point, typically we turn mission execution over to a flight control team for any time-critical operations, anything that can be handled with our flight rules. And we have a mission management team that we funnel all of our management inputs through to get information to the flight control team. If we have more time or an especially critical issue, we can go back and revisit some of that lower level program and organizational board process and come back to another flight readiness review. And in this case, we've got time, and it's a fairly major discussion to decide about whether or not we're going to have crew on board Starliner for return. So we're anticipating another flight readiness review meeting after the programs have had a chance to meet. The timing for those meetings, we're expecting that the data analysis will be ready for a program board middle to end of next week, and that would be ready for a flight readiness review around the end of next week, potentially beginning of the following week. We've got some flexibility there. I know everybody would like a date. We've got some working dates, but I know that we need to maintain that flexibility so that we make sure that we're ready for the meeting before we have it, right? We don't want to just come to the meeting before we've had a chance to process all the information. We've got time available before we bring Starliner home, and we want to use that time wisely. Right now, Butch and Suni are well engaged on board the International Space Station. I know if I was in their position, I'd be really happy to be there, and I'd be happy to have the extra time. It's great to be there, enjoying the environment, eating that great space food, and being able to look out the window. So I know that they're making the best of this time, but I'm sure they're eager for a decision just like the rest of us. And when we have that, we will be sure to get together with the rest of you and share that information. And now I'd like to pass the microphone over to Russ.
Hey, thanks, Ken. Can you guys hear me okay?
I can hear you.
All right, thanks. Hey, so as Ken said, I'm Russ DeLoach. I'm the Chief of SNMA for NASA. It's a pleasure to be here with you today, sharing this information. Safety is a core value of NASA, and one way we ensure that it is incorporated into our decision-making process is through the use of what we call the Technical Authority Governance Model, and that's been something that we've been doing for over 20 years now. The agency has 3 technical authorities. I represent one, Safety and Mission Assurance. There is also the Chief Engineer and the Chief Health and Medical Officer. So we are required independent elements in key decisions within human spaceflight, including this one we are discussing today, the return of our crew and the Boeing Starliner. As the program works through the data and analysis with its provider Boeing, the tech authorities have personnel embedded in these teams, gaining insight and providing inputs throughout. Ultimately, the program will reach its conclusion and bring a recommendation forward to an agency-level review chaired by Ken, with the 3 technical authorities part of the go, no-go poll that Ken will do. And our positions will be informed by the engagement of our people throughout this effort. It is also the role of the tech authorities to ensure that views and perspectives of our diverse workforce are able to be expressed and appropriately considered. This robust exchange of viewpoints is a necessary aspect of a healthy safety culture important to the success of human spaceflight. I see that this is occurring, as it should, as we work through this issue. I've been very impressed with the NASA and Boeing teams working this. They have been at this very hard for a very long time, very dedicated to get to the right answer, whatever that might be. And I am confident that our process is moving to a good decision for the right path to get both Starliner and her crew home. And now I'll turn it over to Joe Acaba, Chief of the Crew Office, for his opening remarks.
Thanks, Russ. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for your interest in our agency's crew flight test. I do want to emphasize the test flight aspect of this mission. As astronauts, we embark on missions fully aware of the various scenarios and outcomes that may become our realities. We undergo rigorous training to prepare both mentally and physically for the challenges that may arise during any given mission. This mission is a test flight, and as Butch and Suni expressed ahead of their launch, they knew this mission might not be perfect. Human spaceflight is inherently risky, and as astronauts, we accept that as part of the job. Right now, the agency has taken the time to ensure we are not putting the crew at a higher risk than is necessary. And as astronauts, that's always something worth waiting for. As Starliner's first flight with crew, Butch and Suni gave the ground teams feedback and data on the spacecraft, both during the ride up and now docked to the International Space Station. That added human element continues to be extremely helpful for our teams on the ground. Butch and Suni have also contributed to countless hours of science and research, which I know our ISS program is very thankful for. As most of you know, Butch and Suni are very familiar with life aboard the space station. This is their 3rd station mission for both of them. I do want to put this into perspective. If Butch and Suni do not come home on Starliner and they are kept aboard the station, they will have about 8 months on orbit. We have done multiple successful long-duration missions, even up to a year. Those missions have given us volumes of data about the effects of long-duration spaceflight that we continue to use in space exploration. As I assign crew members to a flight and before they launch, we discuss nominal and potential off-nominal mission durations. They are always prepared. We are lucky to be in a time in human spaceflight where we have regular resupply missions, enabling the crews aboard the station to receive any extra supplies they may need, and where an 8-month mission falls within our standard long-duration mission timeframe. I've talked to Butch and Suni a number of times throughout their stay, and they continue to be committed to the mission. They are proud to represent our nation, and they continue to show their readiness and resilience. We are proud of all of our current expedition crew aboard the International Space Station as we work through this process. We are proud of the teams on the ground, and we know our CFT crew, Butch and Suni, will be ready to support the direction our agency chooses. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you to our speakers for your opening remarks. We'll now turn it over to the question and answer portion. As a reminder, you can press *1 if you'd like to enter the queue, and we are asking you to state your name and affiliation, and if you could keep it to one question. We can come back around for more within the hour that we have as we get through the questions, but we want to make sure we get to as many individuals as we can during the time that we have. And with that, I will turn it over to the operator for the media questions. Thanks.
Thank you. At this time, if you would like to ask a question, please press *1 and record your name. Our first question is from Marcia Dunn with the Associated Press. Your line is open.
Yes, hi, thank you. Last week you said there was an increased likelihood of using SpaceX to get Butch and Suni back. Are the chances even greater now? And after more than 2 months of dealing with all these problems, what could you possibly learn in the next week to convince you to choose Starliner over Dragon? Thanks.
Hey, Marcia, I wouldn't say anything has really changed in the last week as far as that likelihood. We are getting new data, and it's interesting how, as time goes on, we've got new folks that, as they become aware of what's going on, they're offering inputs and expertise, and it's been very valuable. Sometimes it takes a while for that to come in, that information to come in, but we are seeing some things that are different. A lot of it's confirming what we already knew, but we are seeing some information that has expanded our understanding. So that's been really important.
Thank you. Our next question is from Bill Harwood with CBS News. Your line is open.
Thank you. I think this is for Russ DeLoach or maybe Ken. If the Starliner comes down without a crew on board, and even if it's a fully automated, successful reentry, it goes well, you get the craft back, does that qualify as a loss of mission from a mishap reporting standpoint? I was looking through the guidelines this week, and it appears that would be classified as a top-tier Type A mishap. At least that's how I read the webpage. Is that correct? And if so, what would that mean in terms of post-flight investigation, corrective action, costs, etc.?
I'll let Russ talk the details. All I'll say is whether it's classified as a mishap or not, we will do a very in-depth analysis of the mission, right, just because it was a flight test. But as far as the technicalities of what we call that investigation, I'll pass that to Russ.
Yeah, and Bill, that's interesting you asked that, because that came up actually a couple weeks ago inside my team, and we talked to the agency mishap program manager, and as well as with the commercial crew program folks, and our conclusion was that by the program's mishap plan, if we, NASA, at this point, kind of intervene and make the call to kind of change the mission, that the crew would ride home on something other than Starliner, that we don't necessarily need to consider that a NASA mishap. as Ken said, we're still going to do all the investigation to understand, even where we got today. But right now, the view inside the NASA mishap program community is that does not necessarily mean that we have to label that a mishap. Now, a mishap could still occur later if for some reason there's some event that happens when Starliner is flying uncrewed home. But just the fact that if NASA steps in and says, hey, we now want our crew to fly home on another vehicle, that in itself shouldn't be classified as a mishap.
But taking the crew off, wouldn't that be a mission failure in this context?
I think my view is that it's really within Ken and Steve's purview to sort of define what the mission is. And if they decide to redefine it that way, I think that's something that they could consider.
Okay, thanks.
And because it's a test mission, I think we have a little more flexibility there, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is from Kristen Fisher with CNN. Your line is open.
Hi. Thank you guys so much for holding another press conference. Really appreciate it. Two things. I believe they are for Ken. First, in previous news conferences, you all have said that Starliner, no matter whether or not it brings Butch and Suni back to Earth, that it is still safe in an emergency situation. Is that still the case? And then my second question is just the timing of this decision-making in terms of last week you all said you needed to make a decision by mid-August. Now it looks like we're pushing it back to end of August. Is there a hard deadline on when you all have to make a decision by, or an updated deadline, given the fact that there are so many different constraints with time, specifically the batteries needing to be recharged and whatnot? What is that drop-dead time frame for when you all have to make this decision by? Thank you.
Hey, let's do the second question first. In this situation, we don't have a sharp cutoff, right? We can juggle things and make things work if we need to extend, but it's getting a lot harder. It's with the consumables we're using, with the need for the use of the ports for cargo missions, those types of things. We're reaching a point where that last week in August, we really should be making a call, if not sooner.
Hey, Kristen, could you repeat your first question, please?
Sure. My question was, is Starliner still cleared for Butch and Suni to return to Earth in an emergency situation?
Yes, Starliner is still the contingency vehicle for Butch and Suni. We've looked at that, and when you consider the low probability of exercising a contingency, we think the risk is reasonable to put Butch and Suni on that vehicle in a contingency.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is from Joy Roulette with Reuters. Your line is open.
Thanks. For Ken, I just wanted to quickly follow up on your response to Marcia's question earlier. Could you kind of explain and give a little bit more detail on what you're seeing more recently that you said expanded your understanding of Starliner? Like, exactly what are we talking about there? And then is it still thrusters that you guys are mainly looking at, or are there parachute issues or any other things that might come up on the return journey that is factoring into your decision-making here? Thanks.
The main thing we're looking at is the propulsion system, and the kind of information we're getting is there's a lot of folks out there that have worked with similar thrusters and have seen similar issues, and so we've gotten feedback on what we're seeing, and a lot of it is confirming what we thought was causing the signatures that we were observing on orbit. You know, it's really tough when you don't have the actual hardware to look at, right, when it's up in space. So we brought in folks from our robotic spaceflight community at Glenn and at the Goddard Space Flight Center at JPL. They're used to analyzing propulsion systems when spacecraft are millions of miles away, and they provided some useful input to us. And then
Thank
as far as the other issues, it's mostly just the prop system that we're tracking. We're always tracking a ton of issues, but I wouldn't say there are any other ones out there that are the major factor for this decision on a crewed or uncrewed return.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Our next question is from Michael Sheets with CNBC. Your line is open.
Hi, everybody. This is Michael Sheets with CNBC. I have a question for Russ. I was, like Bill, earlier reviewing some of the old commercial crew documents. I saw the acceptable loss of crew failure rate is 1 in 270. I believe that's still current for the commercial crew program. I know that things are changing and that you guys are getting new data in, but Russ, where is the current calculation for a loss of crew probability based off the information that you have right now? Thank you.
Yeah, Michael, to the best of my knowledge, that analysis has not been updated, as part of this mission operation.
So are you saying that you don't know what it is? I'm a little bit unclear about your answer.
Yeah, and I mean, it takes a long time to do that analysis, right? So it's not something that we typically adjust real time. So I wouldn't expect that from Russ's team. Russ, anything else you wanted to add?
I was just going to add, that the way that requirement was established, it was really a design certification requirement. So it was all about getting it established as part of design certification, and I am unaware of any requirement to update it through the course of mission operations. So yeah, the answer is it's not actively being updated as the operation is commencing.
Thank you. Our next question is from Micah Maidenberg with the Wall Street Journal. Your line is open.
Thank you. This is for perhaps Joe Acaba. Has Butch and Suni specifically been asked about whether they would do the nominal Starliner return, given the data that has been collected and the understanding of risk? If they have, what was their response, and how does that response weigh in with the broader decision-making at NASA about whether to go with Starliner or Crew Dragon? And if they haven't been asked, will they be asked at some point? Thanks a lot.
Yeah, so I've spoken, like I said, quite a bit with Butch and Suni. They are receiving a lot of information that we are reviewing here on the ground. I do ask for their opinion, but when I talk to them, they are relying on us on the ground to analyze the data and to come up with a decision. And they will do what we ask them to do, and that's their job as astronauts.
Okay, so they've never stated a preference or view about the nominal return plan, or?
Yeah, I would just say this is not really a preference thing. They are going to wait for us to analyze the data and to come up with a decision. And again, they will do what we ask them to do.
Thanks.
Thank you. Our next question is from Lauren Grush with Bloomberg. Your line is open.
Hi, thank you so much. During the last press conference, you mentioned you had pulled in propulsion experts from various NASA centers to help. I'm curious if you can just kind of illustrate how many people and teams you have working on this decision right now.
Well, we basically set up a separate team led by the head of engineering at Johnson Space Center. And I'd say that team was roughly 10 people. There were 6 folks from the centers that I mentioned earlier that do robotic space flight, plus specialists from Marshall, Johnson Space Center, Kennedy Space Center. So we brought in a bunch of folks from around the agency and took sort of a focused look led by a different person to come up with whatever conclusions they could from looking at the data. But they didn't generate new data, right? They looked at our existing data.
Thank you. Our next question is from Kenneth Chang with the New York Times. Your line is open.
Great, thank you. This is for Mr. Deloach and Mr. Akaba, probably for Ken Bowersox too. Could you talk about how you think about acceptable risk when, as Joe said, everything astronauts do in space is inherently risky? I know this is complicated because of the uncertainties and you haven't calculated numbers for this mission, but if you thought Starliner was likely to fail during a return, you would have made your decision and be well into the Crew Dragon preparation. I suspect even the odds for loss of crew of 1 in 10, that is, if there was a 90% chance that Suni and Butch would return safely on Starliner, you go, whoa, that risk is too high. But if the odds were 1 in 100, maybe that would be acceptable because that'd be safer than the space shuttle for. So what do you accept as acceptable risk, and how will you make that call when you cannot know for certain how it will turn out? Thank you.
You described the challenge with that pretty well. And so let me tell you how I do that, right? First, I start with an understanding of the baseline risk, and I think about the risk of whatever new plan we might need to go to if that baseline risk goes up. And then I try to get as much education as I can because the best way to make risk decisions is with the best information. And then finally, I know other people may see things that I don't, so I pay attention to the rest of the members of the team. If our technical authorities have a different opinion than I do, that makes a big difference to me. It may mean that I'm looking at something a different way, that we need to spend more time discussing the issue in order to see if we can get to consensus. If we can get to consensus, all see the risk the same way, then I think we have a higher likelihood of a positive outcome. That doesn't mean that we necessarily have to have consensus to make the call. There are some times where you just have to make a decision and you don't have time to bring everybody into agreement. And in those situations, our process is set up to get us a decision when we need it. But those are all the factors that I look at. And the challenge in this situation is the alternative plan raises risk. We've got increased risk on the baseline plan, and we always knew that a test flight potentially was a bit higher risk than return with a vehicle that has a lot of flights under its belt. So those are the things that we're working back and forth and trying to work together as a team. Russ or Joe, anything you want to add on your approach and thoughts on risk management?
No, I agree that the question is exactly the crux of the matter and why it's really taken some time to work through this and getting experts together, because we don't have enough insight and data to make some sort of simple black and white calculation says this is what you should do or not do. And I think that's why we bring a series of experts in from different backgrounds, gives just different perspectives, and that means there is different opinions. I mean, there's a lot of engineering judgment that goes into this, looking at the anomalies and trying to bound the cases of what could be going on and what's potentially the worst case. And if the worst case happens, what are the potential consequences? And I mean, I think that's really what the teams have been working hard trying to figure out over the last couple of months.
Yeah, and this is Joe. As you know, astronauts, we're not really looking at those numbers. And like I said in my introduction, we all went into this knowing that this is a flight test, and with that, it does come with some risk. And again, Butch and Suni were aware of that when they accepted this mission, and they understand that throughout. And I'll hand it over to Emily as well.
Yeah, once we get in flight, it's not always useful to try to put a succinct number on the risk that you're trying to weigh, because you're going to fool yourself if you think you can measure it that closely. That's, as Russ pointed out earlier, that's more of a certification. That's a pre-flight method of assessing risk. Once we're in flight, we can use some numbers to try and gauge where we think the risk is, but honestly, you're then trying to measure with a ruler and cut with a chainsaw. So we have to look a little more holistically at all of the information that we have available. It's really valuable to get experts who have a totally different perspective to come in and look at the data that we've pulled together as we try to understand what it is we may not understand. Like we have a lot of confidence in this spacecraft, and we're trying to make sure that we fully understand the unknowns before we make a final decision. And luckily, the space station provides us the capability to take our time and understand that as best as we can.
Since 4 of us have answered, I'm going to get Joel Montalbano, my technical deputy, to answer too. As station program manager, he got to weigh in on a lot of risk decisions, and I think it'd be good for him to weigh on the idea of philosophy of risk decisions.
No, thanks, Ken, and Emily summarized it great. Kind of adding to what Russ was saying about use those numbers pre-flight, and then once you get into flight, you go look at the actual systems, what's happening, and look at fault tolerance, look at all that work, and then make the call.
Thank you for your question. Our next question comes from Jeff Brumfield with the National Public Radio. Your line is open.
Thank you very much. My question is, first of all, you mentioned you're doing this readiness review. I was wondering how often this happens mid-mission like this. When was the last time you had to do one of these midway through a mission? And then secondly, I know you've said this before, you'll probably have to say it a lot again, but what is the primary concern here about bringing them back on Starliner at the moment based on the data you have? Thank you.
So I can't remember ever doing a flight readiness review mid-mission. I think we had senior level management meetings, but not necessarily flight readiness reviews. Anybody else on the line who remembers us doing this on a previous mission? I know we've done flight readiness reviews for topics where we wanted additional scrutiny, where we typically would have done a review at a lower level. But as far as mid-mission, this is different. Anybody else who remembers one?
Hey, Ken, I don't know if we called it an FRR, but we had something very similar for the SpaceX, the first crewed demo flight for the SpaceX mission.
Yeah, this is Emily. I was going to note that whether you call it a flight readiness review or just a readiness review, before each major milestone, especially on a test flight, we will execute a thorough readiness review. We don't always pull in agency leadership for those conversations specifically, but we certainly review our readiness before each dynamic milestone.
And it sounds like we had a different name for it back on that mission you mentioned, Emily. We called it a NASA-led MMT or something like that, or a Mission Risk Acceptance Forum.
Yeah,
but we have the flexibility to give it a different name, right? It's a little bit outside of our nominal process.
Thank you. Our next question is from Mark Carew with Aviation Week and Space Technology. Your line is open, sir.
Yes, thank you very much. I have kind of a two-part question. Is any assessment going on about bringing Butch and Suni back on the Crew 8 mission, adding them to the 4 coming back? And is there anything that could be done to keep the service module on Starliner? I know it gets ejected when you re-enter. I just wondered if there's anything you could do, spacewalk or software wise, to try to get that back. Thank you.
That sounds like a good question for Joel or Emily.
I would say at this time we're not looking at Crew 8. And then on the keeping the service module, doing a spacewalk or anything, we are not looking at either of those. Just the way the system is designed, right now we just don't get this hardware back, and there's not much we can do in real time. So I would say no to both of those.
And just for context, the engines and the piece parts that we're looking at most closely are all pretty small, so that's not really EVA-able, if I can create a new word.
Yeah, I think I probably missed the part of a previous question, but our big concern is having a successful deorbit burn. making sure that the prop system works just the way it needs to all the way through the deorbit burn. And that's why we're looking so closely at the thruster jets and even thinking about how the larger thrusters work.
Thank you for your question. Our next question comes from Jeff Faust with Space News. Your line is open.
Good afternoon. A question for Ken or anyone else who wants to weigh in. What data or analysis do you expect to see or hope to see between now and the end of next week to inform that upcoming flight readiness review? Basically, what do you expect to learn in the next week and a half to enable you to make a decision on Starliner? Thanks.
The major piece of analysis that we're waiting for is a kind of a detailed 3D model of the system inside the valve to see if we can model the effects. That'll feed into the program boards and discussions. They'll go through all the data they've gotten so far, and then the program will make a recommendation. Our tech authorities, some of the other organizations may want to have their own reviews, and then if they're not satisfied with the work at the control board, and then that would bring a recommendation from the control board forward to that management level review.
Thank you for your question. Our next question is from Stephen Clark with Ars Technica. Your line is open.
Hi, thank you all for doing this press availability. I think my question, to go around the horn to the panelists, to Emily, Joe, and Russ, and Socks, if you want to weigh in, please do. Can you talk about where you were at the last program control board meeting last week? I think, did any of your organizations dissent on bringing the crew home on Starliner based on the data that was presented at that meeting? Thanks.
Well, I guess I can start. So I considered our last conversation to be a really good opportunity for everybody who's been kind of soaking in all of the data that we've been collecting to provide an update on where they are in interpreting that data. And then you can draw from that the open questions, the things that we really need to go after as we're looking to figure out our readiness to undock and come home. And so it was mostly a really good opportunity to get a nice, clear list of questions. And now the Boeing team has run with those questions and is working to make sure that we're focusing all of our efforts on the specific areas that each part of the community wants to see additional information on. So it was a good clarifying moment, I think.
Thank you. And our next question is from Will Robinson Smith with Space Flight Now. Your line is open.
Yes, thanks for taking the time to answer our questions today. Want to follow up on a question from my colleague Stephen Young last week regarding if Starliner comes back uncrewed, sort of the what happens then. Was any specific equipment, in particular SpaceX flight suits, sent upon the recent Cygnus flight for Butch and Suni, and sort of couched within that, you know, once Starliner undocks and in sort of in preparation for Crew 9 to launch the space station, in that interim period, how would the Crew 8 Dragon be used as a lifeboat for Butch and Suni? Like, do they have any special equipment for them to be able to do that in an emergency situation, or could they modify their current Boeing flight suits to be able to work with the Dragon on station in that scenario? Clarification would be great. Thanks.
That sounds like a good Joel or Emily question.
I would tell you that we, from a suit standpoint, they're really not interchangeable. You can't have a Boeing suit and a SpaceX or a SpaceX suit and a Boeing vehicle, and so that would not be the plan. For contingencies, I think you were asking for contingencies. They would come home, like we said in the Starliner. If the Starliner undocks and there's only a Dragon, they would come home unsuited in the Dragon. let's see, Emily, you want to add? And then I think you had one other question.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that that's a configuration that we're kind of accustomed to. You know, we're NASA. We have backup plans for our backup plans. And so at least inside of operations, we'll take a look at what would we need to do in a worst case. So that's not new to this particular situation.
Thank you. Our next question will be from Josh Dinner with Space.com. Your line is open.
Hi, thank you so much. At this point, does NASA think Starliner may possibly be facing a critical design flaw? And if that's the case, is there any potential that this is the spacecraft's final flight to the space station?
Well, all I can say is that our intent is to keep pressing to have two providers. We've got two very good companies, and we want to develop two strong and capable spacecraft. We think we still have a very good chance of doing that, but the answer is always in the data, right? That's why we're doing this mission. We're going to analyze the data, and we'll be driven in our next decisions by that data.
Thank you for your question. Our next question is from Tim Fernhold with Space Load Space. Your line is open.
Hello, everyone. This is Tim Fernhold for Payload Space. First question, I just wanted to follow up on what Stephen asked because it didn't get answered. Did anybody dissent during the program control board meeting last week? And can you say who that was? And then I was curious myself how the flight readiness review interacts with the agency level review that's going on. I guess, Ken, you are the decider, but you mentioned last week it could get kicked to Jim Free or Administrator Nelson. Can you talk about what scenarios would lead to decisions going from the Flight Readiness Review Board to you, to Jim, to Administrator Nelson? Thank you.
Yeah, so let me start off talking about the PCB a little bit. There weren't really any formal dissenting opinions out of the program control board because they really did sort of an informal polling, right? And at that, when they went around the room and asked everybody what they thought, there were some folks who said, hey, if we can get this data, then we could get to yes. There were some that said, hey, we think we're at a no. And then there were some that were at a yes, right? But again, the process is still ongoing, so we don't have formal dissenting opinions yet. The flight readiness review that I keep talking about is an agency flight readiness review. There can be lower organizational flight readiness reviews that come together prior to that agency review. At the agency review, I go ahead and say what my call is, my decision is. At that point, we could have a persistent dissenting opinion. It could come up after a PCB and then be raised at the flight readiness review. It could be elevated beyond that agency flight readiness review, and then it would go to Jim Free. At that point, all of our authority is delegated from the administrator. So in this case, the administrator could decide that he wants to weigh in on the discussion too, or he could decide that he's going to allow Jim or my decision to stand. That's my simple description. And Russ knows a lot more about the process. Russ, anything you want to correct me on? If I got it wrong, go ahead.
No, I think you're exactly right. And I mean, I don't want to sound like, we're doing technicalities here, or legalese engineering, but you're right. I mean, a formal dissent happens, when a decision is made, and this was, I would call it, sort of pre-decisional polling about where people stood. And I will tell you how I took the question that I heard. It really was, do you feel like you have all the data you would need now to make a good decision? And to me, most people were at, no, we need a little more work, and that's why we're continuing to work it. There was a few people that seemed to already be there, but I felt like most of the people were, no, I think we need to do a little more work to get us to a place where we can make a good decision. So that's how I took it. So I didn't hear those as dissents. It was, yeah, we need to pursue more data if we can.
Thank you for your question. Our next question is from Morgan McFall Johnson with Business Insider. Your line is open.
You've mentioned a couple times, of course, that there are risks with both options. Can you explain what specifically are the risks with the alternative plan, bringing them back on Crew Dragon? Are you just referring to the extra months of radiation exposure, or are there other safety or health risks that you're considering? Thanks.
So we can let other folks weigh in on this. The type of risks that I see if we go with the uncrewed return for Starliner is, as you mentioned, there's additional radiation for Butch and Suni. There's additional time on orbit. There is the contingency question. If we use the Dragon as the contingency vehicle for Butch and Suni, Joel mentioned that they would have to execute a contingency without suits. There are some of our contingency situations that require suits, right? So we don't have full protection in those situations. So those are the types of things that raise the risk level and complicate our decision process.
Thank you. Our next question is from David Curley with Full Throttle. Your line is open.
Thank you very much. Ken Bowersox, it seems like Boeing and NASA are in two different spaces. We haven't heard from Boeing for a little while, but their latest posting suggesting all the data points that they had hit, that they feel like they're ready to go. Can you give us a sense of how that's going between customer and contractor?
So let me just say I've got tremendous respect for Boeing and the Boeing team. And that respect has grown through this process. I think we're all developing, and our relationship is developing through the process. We've had very honest discussions with each other, and I'm not surprised that the Boeing team is 100% behind their vehicle. They have confidence in their vehicle. That's what we would like from them, that they have worked on it so hard and believe in it so strongly that they would be a tremendous supporter for a return on their vehicle. But I can also tell you that they want to work with us in a partnership. What NASA thinks, what the NASA team thinks is important. And when we get to a decision, we'll work through it together.
And this is Joel. I would say, just to be clear, the Boeing team has been in our meetings. So, we talked earlier about bringing some experts across the agency in the propellant area. The Boeing team was in that meeting, asking questions, participating, bringing up discussion points. And so you asked contractor versus NASA. I would say we continue to be badgeless there. And then just to go back to Morgan's question, just so we're clear, the unsuited return, if we decide to bring Starliner home uncrewed, there is a time until Crew 9 gets there where you'd have a contingency, and Butch and Suni would have to come home, and where Boeing's gone, you still have Crew 8 there, and the contingency, they would come home unsuited. If we make that decision, once Crew 9 gets there, we'll have suits, and they would come home suited on Crew 9. So I just want to make sure everybody was clear. If the decision is made that they come home on Crew 9, they will come home in SpaceX suits on Crew 9.
Yeah, thanks for adding that, Joel.
Thank you. Our next question will come from Marcia Smith with SpacePolicyOnline.com. Your line is open.
Thank you so much for taking my question. I think it's mostly for Ken, but also for Russ. And I'm just wondering if both of you could think back to the time of Columbia, and I'm sure there are folks there still from the time of Challenger, and talk about how this process has evolved from what happened with those tragedies. How do you see all of this playing out differently than it might have played out in the past?
So go ahead, Russ. You want to go first?
Yeah, I'll start and then pass it over to you. I really do feel like two things that I feel like I'll point to, and one of them is kind of how I started. You know, we did not have the governance structure that we have today with the technical authorities. So at that time, the program managers pretty much had near unilateral decision making. And so if there were views that maybe a path we were taking was not correct, there was really no strong additional authority to step in and say, wait a minute. And then I think the other thing is, you know, and I'll say for me personally, I've been very hyper-focused lately on this concept of combating organizational silence. If you look at both, unfortunately, Challenger and Columbia, you know, there you could see cases where people had the right data or a valid position to put forward, but the environment just didn't allow it. And I think we've worked a lot harder these days in sensitizing everyone to making sure that we have the right environment for people with different positions can bring them forward. I recognize that may mean at times we don't move very fast because we're getting everything out, and I think you can kind of see that on, you know, at play here, where I think some people were like, hey, let's get on with it. But it really is part of that lesson that we learned is you need to have equivalent technical authorities outside of the program, and we need to be very careful to make sure that everybody's perspective is shared. So Ken, over to you.
Yeah, and I was going to say that back around Columbia, we had an input from safety, we had inputs from engineering, we had dissenting opinion process, but it wasn't really called that. I mean, back then we had this thing called the NASA Safety Reporting System, and if you saw something that wasn't good, you were supposed to bring it up, and something could get elevated right away. But what our current process does is it raises the volume on those inputs from the tech authorities, from the safety folks, the engineering folks, from flight crew, the centers, and it gives us a formal way to encourage and to analyze and make a decision on dissenting opinions. So there's still one point where it all comes together, right? And that's up at the top. This gives that person at the top a chance to get the best information when the decision's made.
Thank you for your question. Our next question is from Jackie Wattles with CNN. Your line is open.
Hi, folks. Thanks so much for doing this press conference. Kind of a follow-up to the thought you were just mentioning. So these outside experts that were brought in from, you know, Glenn, Goddard, or JPL, you mentioned that they brought their own expertise related to thrusters like this. Does that mean they specifically had seen, you know, similar Teflon bulge and overheating issues like this? And you know, what specific missions or experience did they bring? Just kind of want to know more specifics about what these experts said that, you know, gave more pause to the idea of just bringing Butch and Suni home on Starliner. Thanks.
Well, I think what they added was just expertise on different systems, a lot of different systems, and on the basic physical mechanisms that are causing what we're seeing on orbit. I think our team had already come to a lot of these conclusions, but the new team very quickly was able to come in and show that our team was on what we think is the right track as they analyzed it. And they made a lot of recommendations for how we could proceed in the future after the mission's over. I think that's useful, and we're going to try to keep those folks engaged as we move forward with both the return and after we have Starliner back on Earth. Anybody else want to add their perceptions of how the external group helped us?
This is Emily. One of the things that that I've noted was there were a few details about kind of the down and in. You mentioned the Teflon poppet and kind of the physics of what we're seeing in there. We've got some the materials that are left on a thruster after it's fired, like some of those really down and in details, getting a couple of jet experts with very different perspectives and very different experience bases, not even in the first conversation with these experts, but in follow-on conversations to really exchange ideas and information just helps flesh out the rest of the information that we're seeing. And it's been really, really valuable getting to listen to those experts as they work through, well, here's my experience and here's what I've seen. How does that compare to what you're seeing with these jets that we have on orbit today and the testing that you did with those, and how do we compare and contrast those experiences? Getting to hear those experts talk offline has been a really valuable portion of the work that has happened over the last couple of days, and that's going to add a lot to the discussion that we have next week.
Thank you for your question. Our next question is from Carla Hall with the Los Angeles Times. Your line is open.
Hi, thanks so much. I know that Butch and Suni are veterans of space station work, but they went up there expecting to stay for 8 days. Now they've been there 2 months, and they may be there 8 months. How are they dealing with that? And what are they thinking about all that? And also, how are they spending all these extra days there?
Hey, this is Joe. And so again, with this being a test flight, they went up, and I think the nominal timeline was around 8 days. But when you do a flight like this, you're always thinking, okay, could it be longer? And again, like I told you, when we talk about these flights, you should go in with that expectation that you're going to do a long duration mission. So I actually spoke to both of them in the last day or so, and they're doing fine. In my office, right now I can watch them working on the International Space Station. So they have fully integrated into the increment crew. So they are as busy as any other crew that is up there. But, we are humans, and this is hard on crew members and their families, and we take that into account. But, again, as professional astronauts, they're prepared for this, and they're doing great.
Yeah, and I would add, in terms of what we have been working on, those 8 days was really what our flight teams had determined was the bare minimum of the number of days you had to have on orbit for Butch and Suni to complete the test mission objectives on orbit. And then, honestly, the team wanted more time. And we, in respect to schedules and everything, you plan for the minimum, and then you're going to take whatever bonus time you get. As soon as we transitioned Butch and Suni from their specific Starliner test objective activities to becoming full members of the increment crew, of the Expedition 72 crew, one of the very first tasks we had them do was take the spare parts from several different pumps and put those together into a new pump, which was a highly surgical operation that we had not necessarily prepared anybody to do. And these guys are so experienced and have such high capabilities that they honestly raised their hands and volunteered for the task. And that pump is now installed and working great for us and is a part of our life support system. They have been contributing to our research on board. They've been contributing to our maintenance on board. They are just highly integrated members of this crew and are always asking for more work to do, frankly.
Yeah, and I would just add, in addition to the team down here looking at the data, Butch and Suni know this vehicle about as good as anybody else. When we share that data, they ask great questions, and they're very involved with everything that we are doing here.
Thank you for your question. Our last question for today will be from Jackie Goddard with the Times of London. Your line is open.
Hello, thank you very much. I wondered if anybody could speak about Crew 9, how they're being kept updated, what their input is in any of this, or do they kind of just sit by and wait for news? There's potentially a lot of disappointment coming up for them too. Can somebody give us some insight into how this impacts and how that impacts are being managed? Thank you.
Yeah, this is Joe, and I just talked to Crew 9 yesterday, so they are definitely informed of what is going on with CFT and any potential impacts that it could have on their flight. We've moved their launch date from the August timeframe into September. And, I think I've said it a few times, but, it's kind of part of our jobs. And we realize that launch dates may slip, launch or mission durations may change real time. So again, as professionals, they're doing great. We are all concerned for our crew that is on orbit, and they are willing to do whatever it takes to support those crew members.
Thanks all. This is Josh, and I'm going to turn it over to Joe Montalbano for some closing remarks.
Hey, first of all, thank you everyone for your interest. Thank you for your time. Great questions today. We will continue keeping you updated on the mission. Looking forward, tonight we have a Progress resupply vehicle launching out of Baikonur at 10:20 p.m. Central Time. And that vehicle will plan to be docked to the International Space Station Saturday, August 17th at 12:56 a.m. Central Time. So once again, thank you for your interest, and we'll keep you updated.
And that's going to wrap things up here. Thanks all for joining.
This does conclude today's conference call. We thank you all for participating. You may now disconnect and have a great rest of your day.
All right, so we just heard from that was the news conference update from NASA on the Boeing Starliner spacecraft. So I want to get some of your feedback, your comments on what you thought about it. First of all, I do want to do this. Let me get this here, put that there, get rid of this, and get rid of that. Okay, we'll leave that up there in case people want to read that. So again, the situation is that the Boeing Starliner spacecraft, it launched on June 5th. It was supposed to do an 8-day test flight with 2 astronauts to the International Space Station. There were issues with the spacecraft, and because of those issues, NASA has some questions about whether it's safe to bring the astronauts back in that spacecraft. So the Boeing Starliner spacecraft is still now, after over 2 months, it's still attached to the International Space Station, and it's stuck in the sense that they're not sure whether they're comfortable bringing these 2 astronauts down in that Starliner. So either they have to make a decision at NASA. Do we use the Starliner spacecraft that brought the 2 astronauts up there to bring them back down, or do we have the 2 astronauts go home in a different spacecraft, specifically a SpaceX Dragon spacecraft, the kind of which has already been bringing astronauts to and from the space station? And they said in the press conference they want to have that decision made by the end of August, but it's still not clear what they're going to do, how they're going to decide. So I want to take some feedback from you. And again, they haven't made that decision yet. What do you think about all this? And maybe also, hang on a second here. Maybe also, I will do a quick poll of you folks. I'm going to do a poll right now, and I'm going to ask you: do you think will the astronauts return on the Starliner or on a SpaceX capsule? Will the astronauts return on Starliner or Boeing Starliner or SpaceX capsule? And the 2 options are Starliner, SpaceX. I'm putting that poll up there right now for you. That's going to be on YouTube. And then I'm going to go over to Twitch right now and post it on Twitch. So we'll let you guys vote on that. And I'll take some comments from you. So you can vote in the chat right now, and actually I'll show you how people are voting. What do you think will happen? What do you think is going to happen? Okay, our YouTube viewers think, so far our YouTube viewers think, that's an Associated Press article on the screen, by the way. Our YouTube viewers think that 87% of our YouTube viewers think they are coming back on a SpaceX capsule, not on the original Boeing Starliner spacecraft. Oh, I'm sorry. The other thing I should add is, if they don't come back on the original Boeing Starliner spacecraft that they went up there in, it sounds like they wouldn't come back until February, which would be they'd be up there for 8 months, rather than it might turn out that if it looks like if they have to come back on a SpaceX capsule, they wouldn't come back to February, and that would be 8 months, an 8-month stay basically, instead of 8 days. All right, so the people on YouTube are overwhelmingly saying that they're going to come back on the Boeing, on the SpaceX and not the Boeing original craft. And then on Twitch, let's see what Twitch has to say. Twitch says, Twitch is even more in favor that they're going to come home on the SpaceX craft and not the SpaceX capsule and not the Boeing Starliner. 91% of people on Twitch thinks they're coming home on SpaceX capsule and not Boeing Starliner, which would mean they would not get home until next February. Do they have enough provisions? Yes. I'm going to give you a little background on this. There's a bunch of questions on this. So, but we can see where you guys stand on this, so I appreciate you voting. I did see some questions. So I'm not sure yet if we're going to do today. I'm not positive if we're going to do today. We may do more Israel-Iran coverage today. We're definitely going to be doing more Israel-Iran coverage. Personally, I think there's a very, very small chance of any kind of attack today, because there are ceasefire talks. There are Gaza ceasefire talks scheduled for tomorrow. And from everything I'm seeing, I believe that Hamas and Hezbollah are at least going to wait until those ceasefire talks happen before doing any attack. I might be wrong about that. If I'm wrong, I can come on the air and cover it. But with the Iran-Israel coverage, I go on the air and cover it when I think there's a decent chance that something might happen. Personally, I think there's a very small chance of an attack, given that these talks are less than 24 hours away now. So I know, and we're not going to do a cam stream. We're not a cam station, and there's other news going on as well. So I'll see what's going on. I can't say. We might do a stream on it. We might not. That's the best I can tell you, depending on how the news is looking and the information I'm seeing. Oh, Keysify, thank you, Keysify, by the way. And Keysify asked about the suit question. So you may have heard them talking in the press conference about Butch and Suni, who are the two astronauts you see in that AP photo right there, Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams, about them coming home unsuited. So what they were talking about is, if there is an emergency and they have to take the SpaceX capsule home in an emergency, they don't have SpaceX suits on. And I believe what was said, if I have this right, I believe what was said is they couldn't wear their Boeing suits in the SpaceX craft. So my understanding is if there were an emergency and they had to get out of there right away and they had to go in the SpaceX craft, then they would do that without a suit on. But if they take a SpaceX craft in a planned way, so the plan is if they don't take the Starliner, they would take the SpaceX craft, I believe, in February. Then they would have suits because suits would be brought to them, is my understanding. So the talk of them having to come back without wearing a spacesuit on the flight home is only applies to an emergency flight where they would have to get out of there right away because something unanticipated happened. But if they come back on the Starliner or if they come back in a planned way, a non-emergency way on a SpaceX capsule, they would have a suit for that. It's just the specific condition under which they would not have suits is if they had to get out of there right away and they had to take the SpaceX craft. That's the situation in which they would not have suits on. But again, if they have to take the SpaceX capsule, but it's not an emergency, they would have suits for that next February, is my understanding. Okay. Now, also, let's see here. Oh, by the way, a quick thanks for your support. Katya T, Kizafai, World, and Red Squirrel 82, Debbie James, Krista Barisi, Lars Hansen, and Senator Funstein, and Sharon A. Bayer, and Debbie James, and Corrine Amos, and Donna Smith. Thank you for your support. And I also want to shout out our moderators too. And also thank you so much to 69% RTP on Twitch and Rivertown Creations on Twitch. Thank you. And Cubat. And real quick, I want to thank our moderators who are here with us. We have Ruth Krafasi, and we have, let's see, Linda Belk and Larry moderate for us on X. Over there on Twitch, we have moderating Bill, Big Ball of Yarn, David Green, I Got That Fire, Papa Bear, Sharon C54, and Surly Dev. And also we have Kay Lowry Body is moderating for us, and Paul Anderson over there on Facebook, and Ronald Egnor. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to take some comments here. Hold on a second here. Is a rescue with a Russian Soyuz craft possible? No, because all of the seats on the Soyuz craft are taken up. So let me show you this here. Why might they have to wait until next year? This is from Associated Press. So, by the way, there are currently 5 different spacecraft attached to the International Space Station, which you can see right here, visiting vehicles. The 5 craft are, where is it? It should be right here. I thought it was on this page. I had it on a different page. Hold on. Let me pull this up for you. I can tell you what they are. So there is a. Let me just get this here. Let me get this up here for you. Here it is. Five stations. It's so weird. Why doesn't it say it? According to NASA, the 5 vehicles parked at the space station are there's the Boeing Starliner, right, which the 2 astronauts took up there. There is a, I believe it's a current SpaceX craft. Yes, there's, oh, it says it right here. I'm sorry. There's a SpaceX Crew Dragon. There's a, there are two, oh no, there's, I think it may be four. It may be four of them because this is undocked. There's a SpaceX Crew Dragon capsule up there. There is a Progress resupply vehicle there, I believe. Yes, Progress 88 resupply vehicle is there. There's the, what are the other ones? Why is it, there's, I believe, yes, oh, here it is. August 12th. Here it is right here. I'm so stupid. It's right in front of my face. As of August 12th, Progress resupply vehicle, Crew Dragon SpaceX capsule, Starliner test flight, Soyuz, which is the Russian craft, and Cygnus 21. What is Cygnus 21? Northrop Grumman. Oh, that's a cargo. It carries scientific investigations and cargo. So as of August 12th, there are those 5 craft attached. Okay? So my understanding is that you wouldn't be taking people in the Progress resupply craft and the Cygnus cargo craft. Obviously, if Boeing Starliner can't carry them, that's out. So you have these two, the SpaceX Crew Dragon and the SpaceX Dragon and the Soyuz. And you might say, well, why can't they just take one of these two ones here? The problem is the seats on these two are spoken for. There are 3 seats on the Soyuz, but there's already 3 astronauts who've been up there for a while who are scheduled to take this one. And it's the same with the Crew Dragon. The 4 seats on the Crew Dragon are spoken for. So if you look here in the AP article, what it says is, this one, could 2 astronauts be stuck at the space station until next year? Like Boeing Starliner, SpaceX's Dragon is meant to carry 4 astronauts. To make room for Wilmore and Williams, the 2 Boeing Starliner astronauts up there, NASA said it could bump 2 of the 4 astronauts who are supposed to go up there with the next SpaceX launch. There's a launch, a scheduled SpaceX launch with a 4-seat Dragon capsule next month. But instead of launching 4 astronauts, they could launch 2 and have 2 empty seats on the SpaceX craft. But that craft would have to stay up there until February. That's because station missions are supposed to last at least 6 months. Some have lasted a year. So the 3-seat Soyuz capsule, which is there right now, that's going to take 2 Russians who have been up there for a year alongside a NASA crewmate who's been up there. And then the Dragon at the station now is the ride home next month for 4 residents. I think that there's 7 people in the space station, if I have that right, besides the 2 Boeing Starliner astronauts, if I have that right. Let's see here. Am I correct about that, that there's 7? Yeah, if I can show you this, there's 7 crew right there, Expedition 71. So there's 7 crew on it now. 4 are due to take the current Space Dragon capsule that's up there down, and 3 are scheduled to take the Soyuz capsule that's up there down. So there's no extra seats on any of the craft that are the 2 craft that are currently up there. So what the 2 astronauts from Starliner would have to do is they would have to wait for a new SpaceX craft to come up next month. There would be 2 empty seats on that SpaceX craft, and then in February they would take that craft down. Okay? I know it's a little complex, but that's why they would have to wait until February. Okay. Red Trek says at least Starliner crew will have some privacy. So I don't know when are the I don't know the exact timing of when the SpaceX one is going back, and then the Soyuz one is. The Soyuz one is leaving in September, so they would, and the SpaceX one that's going back is I don't know when. Is next month as well. So I don't think they wouldn't be I don't know if there'd be any time in which it was just them two up there. I don't know how the timing of all of it would work. Our viewer mass spectrometer says this 6 months extension should easily be worth their own version of the mission patch. Let it say WTF Boeing. It would actually be more like an 8-month extension because the original mission was only supposed to be 8 days long. Oh, people asked about food. So is there enough food, water, and air? AP says, Wilmore and Williams' suitcases were removed from the Starliner before liftoff to make room for equipment urgently needed for the space station's urine into drinking water recycling system. So they made do with spare clothes already up there. A supply ship finally arrived this week with their clothes, along with extra food and science experiments for the entire 9-person crew. I think there's another supply ship that's going there soon too, if I remember that right from the press conference. More supplies are due. More supplies are due in a few months. As for air, the space station has its own oxygen generating systems. Despite the fat reserves, I don't get that VAT reserves comment exactly. NASA would like to get back to normal as soon as possible. Besides Wilmore and Williams, there are 4 other Americans and 3 Russians on board. But they do have it. They're not running out of food or anything like that. Oh, what is wrong with the spacecraft? Why aren't they just taking Starliner back down? So just to show you this summary here, this is Boeing's first time launching astronauts after flying a pair of empty Starliners that suffered software and other issues. Even before Wilmore and Williams blasted off on June 5th, their capsule sprung a leak in propulsion-related plumbing. Boeing and NASA judged the small helium leak to be stable and isolated and proceeded with the test flight. But as Starliner approached the space station the next day, 4 more leaks erupted. 5 thrusters also failed. The capsule managed to dock safely, and 4 of the thrusters ultimately worked, but engineers scrambled conducting thruster test firings on the ground and in space. After 2 months, there's still no root cause for the thruster malfunctions. All but one of the 28 thrusters seem okay, but the fear is that if too many conk out again, the crew's safety could be jeopardized. The thrusters are needed at the end of the return flight to keep the capsule in the right position for the critical deorbit burn. So NASA is just not completely confident in the ability of that craft to get the 2 astronauts home safely. And as you heard was mentioned in the press conference, it's difficult for them to diagnose what's wrong with the spacecraft because the spacecraft is not on the ground. NASA can't run tests on the hardware on the spacecraft on the ground because the spacecraft is 250 miles above the Earth attached to the International Space Station. So NASA has been trying to figure out what exactly is wrong with the spacecraft that made it have these issues, but they can't, the spacecraft, they're trying to do this remotely. If they're not confident enough in its ability to bring the astronauts home safely, then they may decide to have them come back in February on a SpaceX Dragon capsule. Thanks, by the way, to Catalyst45. I really appreciate it. Thanks for being a new member. Also, Janet Burnett, that is extremely generous of you. Janet Burnett, thank you so much, Janet, for your support. Thank you also, Linda Cosma, for your support. I really appreciate that. Yes, Movie Plus, I posted that on my X account. I am aware that the WHO, the actual pronunciation by the WHO was that they said that Mpox was a global health emergency. Yes, and WHO declared the ongoing Mpox outbreak in Africa a global health emergency. I'm not covering that on this stream. I did post about it on my X account. We may do a stream on it today. I don't know. That is something I'm going to have to look into once I finish this stream. So it's possible that we could do a stream on that today. I just don't know yet. I will be looking into that after this stream. So I thank you for mentioning it. Let's see here. Hang on a moment here. But thank you, Movie Plus. Take some more comments from you guys. And here is an updated story from AP about what we just heard. NASA's still deciding whether to keep 2 astronauts in space station until next year. This is that there is the Boeing Starliner spacecraft right there, and there are the 2 astronauts there, Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams. So AP says. NASA said today in the press conference we heard, it is still deciding whether to keep 2 astronauts at the International Space Station until early next year and send their troubled Boeing capsule back empty. Oh yes, that's an interesting point about this. If they want to, if the Boeing capsule would be sent back empty, if it can't bring them back, if they think that it's not suitable to bring them back. I think it said something. Where is it right here? Let me pull up that article for you. Hold on a second here. Right here. Right there. Where does it talk about what they would have to do? Yes, right here. If NASA decides to go with a SpaceX return, Starliner would have to be cut loose first to open up one of the 2 parking spots for U.S. capsules. There are 2 parking spots for U.S. capsules. Before that happens, Wilmore and Williams would fashion seats for themselves in the SpaceX Dragon capsule currently docked at the space station. That's because every station occupant still needs a lifeboat at all times. Once the Starliner docking point is empty, then SpaceX could launch another Dragon capsule to fill that slot. And Wilmore and Williams would take that one home next February. AP also says, yes, rather than flying Boeing Starliner back to Earth, Wilmore and Williams would catch a ride on SpaceX's next flight. That would keep them at the space station until next February, which would mean they'd stay there for 8 months rather than 8 days. Their original mission was 8 days. The test pilots anticipated being away just for a week or so when they rocketed away as Starliner's first crew back in June, but thruster failures and helium leaks marred the capsule's trip to the space station, raising doubts about its ability to return safely and leaving the astronauts in limbo. NASA officials today said they're analyzing more data before making a decision by the end of next week or beginning of the next. These thrusters are crucial for holding the capsule in the right position when it comes time to descend from orbit. We've got time available before we bring Starliner home, and we want to use that time wisely, said Ken Bowersox, NASA Space Operations Missions Chief. Switching to SpaceX would require bumping 2 of the 4 astronauts assigned to the next SpaceX ferry flight, currently targeted for late September. Wilmore and Williams would take the empty seats in the new SpaceX capsule that shows up once that half-year mission ends. Another complication, the space station only has 2 parking places for U.S. capsules. Boeing's capsule would have to depart without a crew ahead of the arrival of SpaceX's Dragon capsule in order to free up a spot. Boeing says the Starliner could still bring the astronauts safely home. Let me actually show you this from Boeing here. Boeing posted about this a couple weeks ago on their social media about their thoughts. They were not on the... It's not that they didn't show up today. I think this was intended to be a NASA-only news conference today. I heard no reporting that like Boeing didn't show up. I think that NASA wanted to have a just NASA news conference today. That's my understanding. So here is what Boeing said on the Boeing Space social media. This was on August 2nd. We remain confident in Starliner and its ability to safely return to Earth with crew based on an abundance of testing conducted by our teams and NASA in space and on the ground. And you can go to their website here and find a comprehensive list of their tests. They said Boeing's confidence remains high in Starliner's return with crew. You can see they talk about all these different tests they do. You can go to the Boeing StarlinerUpdates.com. I'll actually post a link to this page here in the chat for you. I'll post a link to this if you want to read about all of Boeing's testing that they said they did. I'll post a link for that. And so they say that they're confident. Oh, we'll do one more poll. One of our viewers said we should have a poll. Harry Sound says we should have a poll. Would you travel on Starliner? Fine, we'll do one more poll. Oh, I didn't end the previous poll. Sorry, I forgot to end the previous poll. Most of you said that you thought that they would have to come home on a SpaceX capsule and not Starliner. Okay, hold on. We'll do one more poll here. All right, we'll do a poll. We're doing one more poll. And one moment, please. One moment, please. I got to get the poll up on Twitch now. Okay. Let's see. Over there on YouTube, here are the current results of, oops, one moment, please. On YouTube, here are the current poll results. Oops, I got to get these up there for you. Uh, 86% of you say no, you would not travel on Starliner. And then over there on Twitch, the numbers are, well, pretty similar. 81% on Twitch say no. 82% now say no, you would not travel on Starliner. Now, I don't know, maybe some of you just wouldn't travel on any spacecraft. I don't know what the difference would be. So it's not a very meaningful poll if 80% of you wouldn't travel on any spacecraft. But I'm guessing that some of you would travel on other spacecraft besides Starliner. Just to be clear. We'll take a few more comments and questions here. It's a very interesting story. We don't know if they're going to come home on the original spacecraft, and we don't know if if they'll have to stay up there until February and have an 8-month mission instead of 8 days. Literal Mount God says, hopefully some good overtime. Morph Retro on X says, I wouldn't be too picky with transport, but if I had choices, SpaceX properly. Suave says, I don't want confident, I want 100%. Well, I don't think you'll get that from space travel. You know, I can't confirm this, but I remember hearing on the press conference today that one of the press members asked a question saying, like, normally the expected crew survival rate is like 1 in 270 or something like that. I think some of you heard that as well. Now, I can't confirm that fact, so I can't confirm that that was the correct fact given, although that wasn't questioned by the NASA people, if I remember hearing it right. But look, accidents do happen. You might say, like, wow, there's a 1 in 270 chance you won't survive, but I mean, accidents have happened with space travel. And obviously, if an accident happened, there's a high likeliness of like a catastrophic accident. So, no, I think they said 1 in 270. I think that's what was said. I might have misheard it. But anyways, my point is, the reason regardless of that specific fact, which I thought I heard, my point is that if you want 100% safety guarantee, you're not going to be taking space flights at the moment. I mean, even if you want, 99.99999%. Or even 99%. Yes, I have it. Hey guys, I have it right here from Wikipedia. I have the 1 in 270 number from Wikipedia right here. Human rating certification, right here. If I can pull this up for you. NASA CCP rating, human rating standards require that the probability of loss on ascent does not exceed 1 in 500 and that the probability of loss on descent does not exceed 1 in 500. The overall mission loss risk, which includes vehicle risk from blah, 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 is required to be no more than 1 in 270. So maybe here, so this might be what it is. I don't know. When the question was asked, I forget what the question was asked, but so what it sounds like is when they launch an astronaut, NASA, that the overall mission loss risk cannot be more than 1 in 270. That doesn't mean they think it's 1 in 270. They could think it's less than 1 in 270. All right, so that, just to clarify what I was saying before. Because when I heard that question asked, I was interpreting it as saying like, oh, they think the initial risk is 1 in 270. What this says is they can't launch someone if the risk is any higher than 1 in 270, but that doesn't mean they think the risk is 1 in 270. They might think the risk is 1 in 10,000 or 1 in 100,000, which would be below 1 in 270. I do not know what the current calculation is for the risk for the astronauts on the Boeing Starliner mission. Maybe it's 1 in 270, maybe it's a lot less than that. But it can't be more than 1 in 270 when they launch, or else that policy would be violated, if I'm understanding this right, for the commercial crew program. That's on Wikipedia. Okay? So just to clarify. Jeremy Thompson says, 1 in 270, I would take those odds. All right, let's take a few more comments from you guys. Obviously, if there are big updates on this story, we will do more streams on it. Certainly, I anticipate covering it on whatever flight they take on the way down, whether it's the original Starliner flight or whether they come back next February on a Space Dragon capsule, or if they have to leave earlier in an emergency or something. Let's hope that doesn't happen. I would cover that as well. Trace Meat says it's okay for Boeing to have an unsuccessful flight or two. So, it was interesting. In the press conference, they were asked, I think they were asked something like if they still had confidence that Boeing could come through and provide a reliable spacecraft or something like that. And, the NASA people did say they still want to have 2 providers. So, does it say it in the article from this article here? NASA still deciding to keep, yes. So this article from today, NASA still deciding to keep whether to keep 2 astronauts at the space station until next year. Eager to have competing services and backup options, NASA hired SpaceX and Boeing to transport astronauts to and from the space station after the shuttles retired in 2011. SpaceX's first astronaut flight was in 2020. Boeing suffered so much trouble on its initial test flight without a crew in 2019 that a do-over was ordered. Then more problems cropped up, costing the company more than $1 billion to fix before finally flying astronauts. But NASA really does want to have 2 different providers to bring their astronauts to and from the space station. So they would like it to work out with Boeing. But they said they're going to have to see what happens, basically, whether they're going to keep using Boeing. And you can see here, this is from this other article, could two NASA astronauts be stuck at the U.S. Space Station, the International Space Station until next year? And it says here, why is NASA sticking with Starliner? NASA deliberately hired two companies to get its crews to and from the space station, just as it did for delivering cargo. The space agency considered it an insurance policy of sorts. If one crew or cargo provider was grounded, the other could carry the load. You want to have other alternatives. You want to have another alternative both for cost reasons and for safety reasons and options. So NASA needs Boeing to be successful, said Hubbard, who served on the Columbia Accident Investigation Board in 2003. Even with the latest setbacks, NASA insists it wants to keep using Boeing Starliners for astronaut rides. The goal is to send up one Dragon and one Starliner every year with crews 6 months apart until the station is retired in 2030. SpaceX has been at it since 2020. So the International Space Station is going to be retired in 2030. I don't know for sure, but my guess would be, wouldn't that in a way make? I mean, if the main purpose of Starliner is to bring people back and forth to the space station, wouldn't a lot of its purpose go away by 2030? Or maybe it could be used for other things in 2030. I don't know. But my point is it's 2024 now. Like, if let's say Boeing comes back to NASA and says, like, look, we figured out some issues in the spacecraft. We're going to have it fixed by like 2026. At what point is the date so close to 2030 that NASA's just like, it's not worth us spending more money on this thing because we're not going to be able to use it that much because the space station is retired in 2030. So I don't know what the decision process is like there, but it's something to keep in mind. Now, 2007's Honda Accord sedan says there will be another space station. What I don't know is whatever replaces it, if there is a replacement. Assuming there's a replacement for the space station, will these spacecraft be compatible with it? That I don't know. Would the Starliner be able to be used for a future space station as well as the current one? And that I don't know. Fire in the Foxes, our viewer, thinks it won't have a purpose, or I don't know if any purpose or the main purpose, but Fire in the Foxes thinks it won't have a purpose post-ISS. This happened because Starliner was supposed to be ready years earlier. Just to show you some background on Starliner. The Starliner, according to Wikipedia, it was designed to transport crew to and from the International Space Station and other low Earth orbit destinations. Starliner, the first crewed test flight was initially planned for 2017, and it didn't happen until 2024. Boeing has lost more than $1.5 billion in budget overruns on the Starliner project, which has been marred by delays, management issues, and engineering challenges, says Wikipedia. The price paid for flight has also drawn criticism from NASA's Inspector General and from observers who point to significantly lower costs on the competing Crew Dragon. Crew Dragon has already been, for a number of years, I believe, taking astronauts to and from the space station. Okay. IndyCar, our viewer, thinks the issue is Boeing having zero trust in their QC. I think you're saying is others not trusting Boeing. That's what our opinion of IndyCar is. Thanks, IndyCar, for your support. Hey, we'll see. We will see whether NASA decides that the Starliner is safe enough to bring these two astronauts home. That decision is actually coming by the end of the month, supposedly. And secondly, does NASA stick with Starliner and keep working with it and trying to get it certified to bring astronauts to and from this space station? The current space station is being retired in 2030. Thanks to our new member, Cattails45, by the way. let's see here. Oh, the poll is still up. I'm sorry. Wait, yeah. So most of you said you would not travel on Starliner. Sorry, I forgot to get rid of the poll. Okay, we'll take a few more comments and questions here. Marjorie Jones says, whatever happened to the helium leaking, was that resolved? So I'm not positive what the current situation with that is. You can see here it says, an AP said, even before they blasted off, their capsule sprung a leak in propulsion-related plumbing. Boeing and NASA judged the small helium leak to be stable and isolated and proceeded with the flight. But as Starliner approached the space station the next day, 4 more leaks erupted. 5 thrusters also failed. The helium leaks, off the top of my head, I don't know. They were really just talking about the thrusters today, not the helium leaks. So I don't know if the helium Gordon says the helium leak issue is not resolved. I'm not sure myself. I'll see if I can find any information on that quickly for you. I don't know if I can find the information quickly on what the deal with the helium leaks is. Let's see. Is it in here? Oh, right. I got it. This is from August 7th from Associated Press. Engineers are grappling over helium leaks in Starliner's propulsion system, crucial for maneuvering. The first leak occurred before liftoff, but was deemed isolated and stable, then more cropped up in flight. So according to Associated Press, from a week ago, engineers are still grappling over helium leaks in Starliner's propulsion system, crucial for maneuvering, in addition to trying to figure out what caused thruster issues, because the thrusters are essential for the flight home as well. Now, yes, so that's the best I can tell you on that. Although I don't know, I don't know the details on all the helium stuff. But that's an AP story from a week ago saying that. Thanks also to IndyCar for your support. IndyCar says Boeing has a major issue. This was a fixed price contract. Boeing has eaten the cost of the extra cost. That's according to our viewer, IndyCar. Boeing will have to shut down just due to costs, thinks IndyCar. Yeah, I mean, Wikipedia says Boeing has lost more than $1.5 billion in budget overruns on the Starliner project. If you missed it and you want to listen to it, you can rewind this broadcast and listen to the NASA news conference today about the Boeing Starliner spacecraft. Oops. I should, NASA still deciding whether Starliner can bring astronauts home. Maybe I'll put that like this. I'll take a few more. I forgot to update our headline. Hang on. I'll take a few more comments here. Oops. Let's fix the headline here. Fix the headline here. Yeah, and again, regarding the other coverage, so certainly if there is some kind of huge development in Israel and in the Middle East, I will cover that. As I said earlier, my sense is that there's a low likelihood of something happening right now I think there's my sense is there's a low likelihood of an attack overnight by Iran or Hezbollah on Israel, because tomorrow, less than 24 hours from now, are these ceasefire talks that are supposed to take place in Qatar, I believe. And from what I have been seen reported, what I've seen reported suggests to me that Iran and Hezbollah are going to wait until these talks happen to do anything. So, given that there's some other news going on, I might end up covering some other news like I did with this stream. So we'll just have, once I finish the stream, I'll just have to look into the news and see what's going on and make a decision. Okay. Let's see. Peter Booth, our viewers, says helium is not currently leaking because they have shut off the valves, which will need to be reopened when they land. That is what Peter says. Okay. Oh, and thank you, Donna Smith, for the gift membership. All right, I think what I'm going to do is just a couple more comments here. But again, this decision on whether they're going to come back on Starliner or whether Starliner will have to come back empty, and they will have to return in February on a SpaceX craft, that is coming up by the end of the month, supposedly. Trace Neat says, do they have enough supplies to stay 8 extra months? The answer is yes. All right, let me do this. So I'm going to wrap up this stream right now. So obviously, if there are big updates, if and when, there will be big updates on this story. So if nothing else, when they come back on their flight, we will have more coverage of this story, and I will keep you posted on that. I don't know exactly what streams they do, but we would cover their flight home. And I hope everything continues to be safe for them. For their sake, I hope they get home sooner rather than later. And I hope that it's decided that Starliner can take them back and they get home safely. But we'll have to see what happens. We very well might have more live coverage today on either the Iran-Israel story or other news. I got to figure it out once I get off the air. I can't decide that right on the air. I got to look into some stuff. So subscribe and follow this channel, Agenda Free TV. We cover all kinds of live breaking news without an agenda here. Turn on the notifications. We have a free notification system. You turn it on and you get notified. You sign up once for free and you get sent a notification whenever we go live, which is really helpful. A day like today, I don't know if and when I'm coming on again and what times. So sign up for the free notifications. The mod will post the link. Mods will post the link to that in the chat, and you can also find the notifications link on the YouTube and Facebook descriptions for this video, and I will post when I'm not on the air during the day today, whenever that is. I will post updates on my X account, which is @Lookner on X. You can follow me there for breaking news updates throughout the day, even when I'm not on the air. I will post a link to that in the chat right now for you. And I really appreciate you tuning in, and thanks for asking your questions and making your comments and letting me read them on the air. Thank you for watching. Again, very possible more coverage in a little bit of something. And huge thanks to our moderators. Our moderators are awesome. They're the best. They're the reason we can have chat rooms. Ruth Krafasi has been over there today on YouTube moderating. Thank you, Ruth. And I think Kinetic might have been over there too earlier. Thank you. Linda Belk and Larry on X. Our Twitch moderators like Big Ball of Yarn, Cerrero, David Green, Good Luck Duck, I Got That Fire, Papa Bear, Sharon C54, and Surly Dev. Thank you so much moderating on Twitch and on all of our other moderators there, and on Facebook. Paul Anderson, Kay Lowry Body over there, Ronald Egnor, all of our other Facebook moderators, huge thanks to you for being there. Also, thanks to everybody who donated. So nice of you. You are the ones who support this channel and allow it to exist and buy footage and stuff like that. Although the footage the audio I was using today is just publicly available because it's NASA audio. But we were looking at the AP articles I was showing you. I believe me, I pay for those. So that's an example of your support allows me to have those articles and the AP photos. So thank you. Let's see here. We do have a Discord chat where you can chat with other viewers when we're not on the air, and it's free, and the link to that is the same as the notifications link. So check that out. And thanks to our Discord mods, I really appreciate it. We're currently looking for more mods on Twitch and Facebook. So, we always are looking for more. Put it this way. We're always interested if somebody wants to be a moderator. But on YouTube, we have a bit of a wait list now. So if you're interested in modding on YouTube, hold off for a second. If you're interested on Twitch and Facebook, reach out and let the mods know. So we're always interested if you want to be a mod. It's just on YouTube, there's a bit of a wait list now. And the mods, we don't want people sitting on a wait list forever. So we'd rather let you know and hold off on that. But let's see here. I really appreciate all of our moderators. You are so helpful. You are so awesome. And thank you, all of our moderators. Let's see here. I wanted to mention, really quick for those people who watch on YouTube, just remember on YouTube, if you want to turn on the YouTube notifications, what you should do, it's kind of strange, go to the YouTube channel and click on this bell that says subscribed and sign up, and then activate the bell and then click on all notifications. That's what you got to do to turn on the YouTube notifications. And also a quick reminder, I do have a personal channel. Haven't been on there much lately because there's been too much news, but I do some non-news live streaming too. That is called Lookner on YouTube and Look Nerd on Twitch. It's the same channel, spelled differently, so you can check that out if you'd like. Oh, thank you so much, Krista Barisi, for all your support during this stream. Krista Barisi, thank you. I appreciate it. Hey, shout out to our subscribers over there on Twitch, like Who Shot JR, Blue Pip, Wall Street and Shaggy, and Sketty Sandwich. Really appreciate all of our subscribers there. Gina Pina, A Moment of Lovely, Tegrity Farmer Bob, New Dragons. Thanks for subscribing on Twitch. Let's see here. Bogan04, thanks for subscribing. Koa Goose, thank you for subscribing. And all of our other subscribers over there on Twitch, I appreciate you. And thanks for your support to the subscribers on Facebook, like Eve Richards, Kay Lowry, Body, Margaret Riley, Diane Allworth, Lou Green, Jane Summers, and Michael Clayton, Marjorie Jones. Thank you, Facebook subscribers, Ronald Egnor. Thanks for supporting the channel. Hopefully I got everybody who's there in the chat right now. And also in our YouTube chat, thanks to all of our members over there, YouTube members, for supporting the channel. People like Terry Rose, John Corbell, Marissa Pugliese, Justin King, Cheryl Simpson, Krista Baresi, Clint Paraguay, Maren Gobra, Anonymous Nobody, Danny G, Janet Burnett, Gunplug Glenn, Panda 3000, Pat W, Mythical, Sonic Teal, Dawn 63, and Roger Shoemaker, and Kristen Smith, and John Herzog, Kelly McAllen, Jesse's Girl, H. Parsons, Hal 9001, By the Sea, and all of our other YouTube members. Thank you. And Ronald Kame, thanks for the gift memberships. Really appreciate that. Ronald Kame, thank you. Okay, so again, the plan is, and thanks to everybody else who is watching as well and chatting as well. So again, the situation today is we very well might have more news streams today, one or more news streams. I don't know yet if I'm doing an Israel-Iran stream. As far as I can tell, My take on the situation is that there's actually a very low chance of some kind of attack in Israel, because tomorrow, in less than 24 hours, there are these ceasefire talks coming up that are supposed to happen tomorrow. So I personally find it unlikely that Iran or Hezbollah will attack just hours before the ceasefire talks, especially given some reporting I've seen. So if I still continue thinking that it's very unlikely there's going to be an attack, I don't know that I'll do an update stream on that. We'll certainly be covering it more. But if I don't do that stream, I may do a stream on one of the other news stories that's going on. So I need to get off the air and look into it and figure it out. Also, if something happens in the Middle East, I can just come right on the air. So nothing is keeping me from. It's not like I'm forbidding myself from doing a live stream. I can jump on the air and cover whatever I want at whatever time I want. So, anyways, I'm going to wrap up this stream right now. But I really appreciate you tuning in for our coverage of the NASA update on the Boeing Starliner, and I will post news updates on my X account at Lookner, and follow Agenda Free TV on X at Agenda Free TV. I post programming updates over there. Oh, and thanks to our member Mary McHugh too. So that is it for now. Thank you for watching this stream, and we'll see you very soon with more live breaking news coverage right here at Agenda Free TV.